Welcome to the Root of Power podcast, where I teach you how to chase your joy, find alignment, and create a life and a business that you love, using actionable methods, interviews, and inspiring stories from people who know that true freedom is found within. I'm your host, your always hype woman and sometimes ass kicker, Amanda Chills, and I am so proud of you for choosing to step into your power. Come along, we've got dreams to build. Okay, my love, I have put everything that I offer for free on one page so that we are not doing more work than we have to, because why would we do that? Hashtag work smarter, not harder. So livemyhappyhealth.com/free. You are going to find everything I've created for not only leveling up in your personal life and building a life that you love, but leveling up in your business life and building a business that you love. Okay? livemyhappyhealth.com/free. Love you. Hi, welcome to this episode. And this episode has been a long time coming. But before we roll into that, hello. Hi. How are you? I hope that you are well. I hope that things are getting better for you. I hope that you are continually surprised and delighted by universe and by things that are happening for you. I hope that you are flowing like a river down a mountain and finding the path of least resistance and the path that makes you the happiest. These are all things that I hope for you and I wish for you. And this episode is going to be very useful for you if you're feeling like some stuck, some fear, some anxiety around life, around your future, around really anything. This episode will be quite useful for you in that case. So I have so many clients who come to me and they have this big fear of change. And they even tell me, like, I'm terrified of change. I'm scared of change. Change is terrifying, blah, 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 blah. And it feels incredibly paralyzing for them because obviously one of the fear responses is to shut down, to withdraw, to avoid, right? The flight response. So for many people, when they have this fear of change, they just try not to change anything. They're like, I'm not making any decisions. I'm not changing anything. I really want to leave my toxic job. I cannot tell you how often this comes up. I really want to leave my toxic job. I don't like the pay. I am so burned out. My manager is a total asshat. They're unethical. They're doing illegal things. They're taking advantage. But I don't like change, but I don't want to change, but I'm terrified of change is what they'll say. And that logically makes no sense, right? And my clients even know, and I'm sure you know, and you've probably thought or said, like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, I know that this would be the better decision. Leaving my job would be the better decision. Leaving my partner would be the better decision. Starting that business would be the better decision, but I'm so terrified of change. And so people they feel paralyzed. And that doesn't benefit you at all, right? When if something sucks, if something constantly feels like eating hot mayonnaise, the thing to do is not continue eating hot mayonnaise, hoping that eventually you'll learn to like hot mayonnaise. The thing to do is to stop eating hot mayonnaise and change what you're doing, make a different decision. And if you're like my clients, what has happened for them is they've had a lot of programming, a lot of conditioning around the idea, the belief that they're helpless, that they never make the right decision, that they, every decision has to be the perfect decision. And if one thing goes wrong, it means everything is a waste of time. Everything is worthless. And, so many of my clients feel like they have no control and no agency and no power because they've been taught that they have no agency, they have no power, they have no control, they're helpless. But that's not true, right? Like, I know that you know that that is not true, but that's what my clients have been taught, and that's what perhaps you have been taught. And it's garbage, quite frankly. Like, obviously, children have less agency than adults, but if you're an adult, you have agency. You are the owner of your life. You are the owner of your decisions. So if you don't like something, you can make a different choice, which is where part of this fear of change comes from. Is like, it's up to you. It's up to you, right? And that can feel really scary, especially if you have a history of being disempowered, of being taught that you're helpless, you're hopeless, you're stupid, you never make a right decision. Perfection is the only thing that's good. You have to make the right decision. Like, so many of my clients have this huge anxiety about making the right decision. And I have to make the perfect decision, as if they only ever get to make one more decision in their life, versus you make decisions all the time. And if you don't like something, you can just make a different decision. You are never stuck. You are never so far gone that you can't come back from it unless you die, in which case, I guess you're never making another decision again. So problem solved. Like, everything can be come back from, essentially. So when I say this to clients, I'm not telling them anything new. This is not new information for them, and it's not new information for you. I'm telling you things you already know. I'm reminding you of things that you know to be true. You know that you can just make a different decision. You know that if something's not working out, you can change it. But somewhere along the line, my clients and perhaps you have been taught differently. And what I tell my clients and what I will tell you is, like, that benefits whoever's trying to control you. It benefits whoever's trying to manipulate you. It benefits whoever wants power over you. If someone's teaching you that you're powerless, that you're hopeless, that you can't do anything right, then that certainly doesn't benefit you, but it definitely benefits the person who's attempting to get power over you, who's attempting to control you, who is attempting to manipulate you. Like, it doesn't benefit you, definitely benefits them. When people are scared, they're much easier to control and they're much easier to manipulate. So it benefits people to terrify you. It benefits people to scare you and to make you think that you have no choice and you have no power and you have no control and you have no agency. But you know, and I know that that is not true. It may not feel that way, but you know, and I know that that is not true. You have a choice. You have agency. You have control. You have power. And if someone is trying to teach you that you have no power, they 100% know that you have power. They just don't want you to remember it. So that's one of the very valuable things to remember, is like, you always, always, always have a choice. And the more intentional you are about your choices, about change, the happier you are, because you're actually the person in charge of change. So if you have this narrative, if you're experiencing this fear, this anxiety around change, oh God, I don't want anything to change. If you've been saying, I'm scared of change, I'm terrified of change, like, first of all, that's part of the problem, because what we say, mind will make true. What we say, mind will find evidence of. So if you consistently say, or if you even say it once, mind will find all the evidence of where that's true. Mind will find all the evidence of where you have a belief that change didn't work out for you. So that is completely unhelpful, right? It's like going into work every day complaining about how much you hate it. Okay, that makes you hate your job more. It's like only ever talking shit about your partner or partners. That makes you dislike your partner or partners. It makes no sense. It makes things worse. It makes things harder to move. So no thank you to that. What you say will become true, because you will do whatever it takes to make it true. This is why you see a lot of people who like gossip and talk shit and are really negative have a lot, just have a lot of shit never happen for them in a positive way. Like life doesn't get better for people like that because what they say becomes true. So the power of your words and your language cannot be overstated. I have an episode on this a few months ago called Powerful Language Shifts. One of the most valuable episodes I've ever done. So like, please go listen to it. So what my clients are really scared of when they are saying, I'm so scared of change, I'm so terrified of change, like what they're really afraid of is the unknown. What they're really afraid of is the fear that if it doesn't work out, they'll be stuck. The fear that they'll make a wrong, quote unquote, wrong decision. The fear that perhaps they'll be back in the same situation. And I say that in quotes that they were in before, right? So like you'll see this with people who have a toxic job. Well, what if I make this decision and it's just like this place? Okay, well then you change again. Well, I had a really abusive relationship and what if I just get into another one? Okay, then you get out of it. Like you change it again. You change things until you're happy. That's the crux of it, is like you change things, continue changing whatever you would like to change until you are happy. So really, what I know is that the more you change things to be in alignment with what you do want, what you do desire, the happier you are. And you can change everything. The people you can't, there's a quote I really like called, you can't change the people around you, but you can change the people around you. So you can change the people around you, your living conditions, your living situation, your living environment, your job, your education, your body, your relationships, the food you eat, the things that you consume, the books you read or listen to, the music that you listen to. Like you can change anything. You can change anything. And once that becomes embodied, that, oh, okay, I actually can change whatever I want. And the more intentional I am about changing whatever is not working for me, the better life is. Obviously, the less scary change becomes because now change is your friend. Now you know that change is a good thing. Change is something we actually want. If you're not happy, I certainly don't want you to stay in that place and not change anything. And I would argue that you don't want to stay in that place and not change anything. So what you actually do want is change. We want change that you choose. And the really ironic thing about people who stay in that fear, because you don't have to stay there, that is a choice. People who stay in that fear, it gets reinforced that life happens to them. Because even if you refuse to make a choice, that's a choice. And then a choice will be made for you. And that often means you're not getting the thing that you want, which then reinforces this belief that people like that have of, well, I don't get what I want. I never get what I want. You know, nothing changes. Oh, I'm just getting more of the same. But it's like, okay, you're the person choosing that. You're the person who's not choosing to change something that you want to change. So yeah, you're not going to get what you want. So that becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. And this is where people say, oh, I sabotage all the time. Self-sabotage, self-sabotage. No, 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 no. The intention is not to sabotage. The intention is to seek safety. If change feels scary, you will avoid the thing that's scary. That's how mind works, right? When mind perceives a threat, change, lion, bear, semi barreling down the road coming at you, mind runs away. Well, mind will cause blood to go to your legs so that you run away, because when mind perceives a threat, its intention is survival. Survive now so that maybe we can thrive later. And it will do whatever it takes to survive, even run away from the very thing that would help you, which would be change. Obviously not the bear or the semi-bear laying down the highway is not going to help you. Change is the very thing that you're actually wanting, but because mind is perceiving it as a threat, mind is like, oh, hell no, that's a bear. So we're going to go in the opposite direction. Like that's what mind is doing, but it's not benefiting you in the long run. And then what happens is people get stuck in this short-term loop where they know that it would be beneficial to change something, to get a new job, to leave the relationship, to move, to, change whatever. But because mind is perceiving it as a threat, they avoid it. And then it comes up again and they avoid it again. And it comes up again and they avoid it again. And it's like this merry-go-round of avoidance where they feel stuck and then which leads to feeling helpless, which leads to feeling hopeless, which also means that when you feed a fear, it gets stronger. And so the fear becomes bigger. And this is how people really unintentionally create a life of misery. And it all started a long time before that. This is all an unconscious process. It started a long time before that when someone implanted the belief that change is scary. So you now know what I know that you already knew, which is that the more intentional you are about change, the more you get what you want and the happier that you are, which is a beautiful thing. So common fears that people have with this, and my clients will tell me like, well, what if it doesn't work out? Okay, well, then you just change whatever thing, you change the thing so that it does work out. Like if I make dinner and I burn it, I just make a different dinner. Like that's okay. You can do that. You can change something else. You can change again. You can change your mind. Well, what if I make a decision and I'm stuck there? Why would you be stuck there? That doesn't make any sense. Because people see, or like when people are in that headspace, they believe that like that one decision is for the rest of their life, right? Like for example, I was speaking with a client who is getting married and they were like, well, divorce is not an option. Like it's just not an option. And I'm like, no, I guarantee that there are things you would get divorced over. Like, let's not bury our head in the sand and say, well, it's never a possibility, because it is. And so if, like, let's say they went into the marriage with that mindset, and I said, well, what if your partner starts beating you? What if your partner starts beating your kids? And they're like, oh, absolutely not. And I'm like, okay, so you would change things if things were bad enough. And they were like, yeah. And I was like, okay, so divorce is an option. Like, it's not the one you reach for first, depending on what's going on. It may not be the one I reach for first if like, it's something minor, but if I were married and my partner pointed a gun at my head, listen, divorce is the first thing I'm reaching for. And also charges for a lot of shit. So change, when people go into it with like, oh, this decision will be the decision that I keep for the rest of my life. Yeah, then it makes a lot of sense that people put so much pressure on themselves to make the quote unquote right decision, to make the perfect choice. But like that doesn't exist, right? And that feeds a fear of change because people are worried that they're going to be locked in to a decision, but you're never locked into a decision. You can always change your mind. You can walk away from anything that's no longer serving you. So this fear of the unknown is not real, right? Because if you're the person making the change, then there is no unknown. Now, you may not have the whole picture laid out, but that's normal. Like no one has the rest of their life laid out. That's just not how life works, right? You make a decision and new doors open, and then you make the next decision and then new doors open. And it's always like one step, multiple options, next step, multiple options, next step, multiple options. It really is a choose your own adventure. But none of those options are unknown to you. They become known the closer you get to them. But like, I can't know step 7 until I'm at step 6. I don't have that information yet. If I'm at step 1, I can theorize what step 7 is, but I won't know for sure what my options are until those are the options in front of me. So people have this fear of the unknown and they're like, well, I'm just terrified of change because I don't know what will happen. And it's like, great, welcome to life. Like, welcome to life. None of us know. We just explore the options in front of us and then make a decision that's in alignment with what we're wanting long term. So this fear of the unknown is not real, right? Like it's not real because you're going to know the options in front of you. And if you feel like, okay, I want some help with those options, like you can always talk to someone who has knowledge in that area, and then you'll have more knowledge of the options in front of you. So this fear of the unknown that people have doesn't make sense. And now you know that it doesn't make sense as well. So what the other fear that people, or another fear that people will have is they're like, well, what if something bad happens if I change something? Okay, well, then you just change it again. You change it again. If you get into a relationship and that one doesn't work out, you just change it. You change your relationship status. You leave the relationship. If you take a new job and you're like, damn, I really thought this was going to be good, but like, oh, bruh, this is not good. Like, okay, you just change jobs. Now, that's not me saying like change jobs right now, change jobs tomorrow. Like, obviously, things take planning. Obviously, your timeline for being able to change things depends on multiple factors. So understand that I'm saying these things with those things in mind. Like, so people are afraid that it won't work out, to which I also say, well, the person in charge of making sure things work out are you. Like, you're the person in charge of that. And if things aren't working out, you can just change the things. Like, that is an option to you. So the more intentional you are about change, the more you get what you want and the happier that you are. And so another fear that people tell me, that my clients tell me, is that they're afraid they'll be back where they started, right? But like, life is not a linear staircase, it's a spiral staircase. There is no backwards. There is never a starting at the beginning because you're always starting again from experience. You don't just forget the lessons that you learned, especially once you embody those lessons. So what I tell people, and what they come to know to be true, is that once you embody a lesson, your body will not let you forget it. So for example, I had one client who came out of an incredibly abusive relationship. Like, it was bad. It was bad. And they were very worried about getting into another relationship and not being able to recognize the red flags. Not that they didn't recognize them before, they ignored them. And not like, they were afraid that they would repeat the same pattern. And I told them, listen, there is a 0% chance, that your body allows you to miss those signs again, because now you embody those lessons. They're in your body. Your body knows. So your body will quite literally never allow you to be with someone who is cruel or abusive again. You won't be able to do it. Like, you could do all this mental gymnastics before because you were shutting off access to your body, but now that you're embodied, now that you're able to feel emotions and like live in your body, 0% chance that you will ever be in that kind of a relationship again, because your body just won't let you. So once you embody decisions, you're never restarting, right? Because all of that knowledge, all of that wisdom lives inside of you and will guide your decision. So people make progressively better decisions. Their change gets better and better and better. The things that they change become more refined, more calibrated, until they're in like full alignment and they're happy. Like, that's the end goal, right? Is like, you look around your life and you're just like, holy shit, this is so good. This is so good. And if you're not there now, then it would be very beneficial to change some things to get us there. But we don't get there without changing where we are. So the more that you change and the more intentionally you change it, the happier you are. And so the fear that sometimes people will say is like, well, I don't want to be back in that space. And it's like, well, great, you'll never be back in that space. Like, it's literally not an option. And nothing is so bad that you can't come back from it, right? Like no decision, nothing that you change will be so bad that you can't then change something else and make it better or change the thing that you changed unless you die, in which case I guess there's no coming back from that until someone gets very good at necromancy and or Dr. Frankenstein is around. So there's nothing so bad that you can't then change it again. So how do we release this fear of change? Okay, well, one, it's helpful to understand that mind is attempting to protect you because mind is perceiving a threat. Mind is perceiving change as a threat. It's like, oh, okay, well, that's a threat. I'm going to jump into survival mode, which means blood rushes away from head into legs to run away. Because if it were a bear, it would be very beneficial to run away from it. So same mechanism, same programming. It's just not helpful because change is not actually a threat. It's only being perceived as a threat, which is where like a bear is actually a threat. Although I'm fairly convinced that the way that I will die is trying to pet something that should not be petted. But I'm like, if I die that way, like, it's okay. The helpful thing is to know that mind is trying to protect you. And I know as soon as I said that, it clicked and you were like, oh, okay, well, that makes a lot of sense, right? Like mind is perceiving a threat. And so mind goes into survival mode, which means run away, run away. Getting mind to understand that not only is change not a threat, it's actually the thing that we want. Because the more that you intentionally change things, the closer you are to being happy until you reach happiness. Like there will be a time where you look around and you're just like, I cannot believe that my life is this good. Like, damn, this is really good. But if you're not there yet, then it behooves us to change things until we are there. So the thing that we actually want is change. And for subconscious, the more energy you put into avoiding something, the more evidence you're giving mind that that thing is scary. The faster you run towards something, the more evidence you give mind that the thing is safe. So let me repeat that. The more you avoid something intentionally, the more evidence you give mind that it is dangerous. The more and the faster you run towards something, the more evidence you give mind that it is safe. The more that you avoid change, the more evidence you give mind that change is dangerous. The more you run towards change, the more evidence you give mind that it's safe. And the more literal evidence as well, right? Because what will happen is you'll make a change, make a change, make a change, make a change. It'll be benefit, 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 benefit. And you're stacking evidence that the more you change, the happier you are, the better things get, the more aligned you are, the easier life is. And so now you experience ease, flow, clarity, freedom, happiness. And all of that evidence stacks. And all of that comes from intentionally changing things. So change leads to freedom, clarity, calm, peace, happiness. What a beautiful thing. And I've done this with hundreds of people, right? Like a lot of my clients come in afraid of change. And what they learn is that the more intentionally they change things, the happier they are. So mind is attempting to help you, except it's misreading the data. It thinks change is a bear, but change is actually the thing that we want. So we run towards making changes that feel good. Not just sound good, feel good. And a very helpful thing to go along with that is like cultivating optimism. So people who are negative, again, mind is attempting to keep them safe by seeing danger everywhere, but eventually that builds a prison. Whereas people who are positive, people who cultivate optimism, it's literally an intentional action. It's something that can grow like a plant. You plant a plant, you water it, it grows. Same thing. You plant optimism, you water it, it grows. Cultivating optimism is very intentional. And what it does is it allows you to get very good at seeing opportunities everywhere. And instead of looking at what could potentially go wrong, you look at what could go right. And inherently, you understand that one is more motivating than the other, right? If I'm only handing you cons, suddenly that decision doesn't seem very good. And if I'm handing you pros, you're like, well, that's a pretty good decision. So, like, if I were talking to you about going to Alaska on vacation, and I was like, well, it's really dirty there and it's so cold, and you're going to have to spend hundreds of dollars on winter gear, and you may get frostbite. You know, people get frostbite there, and it's dark, and you're probably not going to be able to sleep, and you're going to have such a hard time adjusting. You're going to be like, fuck Alaska. I am not going. I am not going to Alaska. That sounds terrible. But if I tell you that, you know, it's one of the most beautiful places in the United States, and the people there are so friendly, they're so kind. You're going to see glaciers, and you're going to be on these hikes that are going to take your breath away. And, you know, we're going to go on a salmon. I don't know if they have salmon there. We're going to go fishing with local indigenous populations, and we're going to learn about their culture. And it's going to be so cool. And it's going to, like, it's literally going to take your breath away. You're going to be like, oh, damn, like, let's go to Alaska. Like, bitch, sign me up. We are booking a trip. So when we intentionally look for evidence of a positive, i.e., cultivating optimism, the easier it is to move towards that thing. Whereas mind was trying to protect you by identifying the negatives, what it actually did was make your world very, very small and just put you in a fear state. And we know that when mind perceives a threat, blood rushes away from the brain and into the legs so it can run away. But that doesn't benefit us to be constantly running when we want to be walking towards happiness, towards our dreams, towards what we want. Pretty hard to do if you're always running away from something. You can't really run towards and away at the same time, right? So cultivating optimism, identifying the positives makes it so much easier to walk towards them, which is beautiful. So then we say, oh, okay, this is the change that I want. I want beautiful scenery that takes my breath away. I want to learn about indigenous populations in Alaska. I want to hike a glacier. I want to hike a glacier. Like, I want to do those things. I want to go camping. I want to do the things that people do in Alaska. And then it's like, okay, well, great. Let me book a trip to Alaska, right? Or if you're looking at changing jobs and you're like, man, like, but what if it's the same as here? But what if my coworkers there suck? But what if we're right? So mind is attempting to keep you safe because mind is perceiving a threat, but it's not helpful to you, because what is actually more useful is identifying the positive. Now, that's not to say ignore any potential negatives, but that is to say cultivating optimism is much more useful than being in a fear state 24/7. It's just not useful for you. So much more useful to identify positives and to focus on those, knowing that if a problem comes up, you can just change it. You can just make another change and deal with it. Like, you've dealt with everything that's come up so far. So, 100% track record, fairly certain you can deal with whatever comes up. Okay, you are capable. Not only are you capable, you are like wildly capable of doing that. So it's also very useful to work through your worst fear, like reverse engineer the scenario, right? I call this Armageddon. Like, this is, for me, I call this playing Armageddon. So I'm like, okay, what's the worst thing that happens? Oh, I go to this new job and it's horrible. Okay, then what? Well, then I guess I would just get a new job. Bingo, bango. Great, right, correct. Yes, you just change whatever it would be useful to change that gets you closer to what you want. So it's not like one decision makes everything better, right? But one decision can make everything better. It may not make things perfect, but it very much can make everything better. Leaving a toxic relationship makes everything better. Leaving a toxic job makes everything better. Making more money, if you are financially struggling, makes everything better. So while it may not make everything perfect, it will make everything better. And then you continue calibrating, changing, adjusting what is useful to change until things are where you want them to be, right? People do this with recipes, right? They'll like follow a recipe and they're like, oh, it needs more garlic. But if you were someone who's like, I'm terrified of change, I can never add more garlic. Well, then you're going to eat bland food for the rest of your life. That makes no sense. Okay. Change whatever you want to change until you're happy. So working through your worst fear is very useful for that because mind is trying to help you. We just want to give it an appropriate job to do. So like if a toddler were with you baking in the kitchen, you would not give it the job of putting the hot things in the oven because it's a toddler. You may give it the job of like mixing eggs in with the flour. So let's give mind an appropriate job. So we work through our worst fear and then everything else you can problem solve from there because now we've gone through the worst thing that you can think of. This is something I tell clients that the point is to shock them. The point is not for them to actually follow what I'm saying. Because of my personality, I can get away with saying some ridiculous things. But the point is to get them out of that loop, right? So if people are like, I'm terrified of change, I'm terrified of change, I tell them, okay, then die. The only way to guarantee that nothing changes is to die, which, by the way, will change everything. So we may as well make the changes to make life enjoyable. If dying changes everything, but guarantees that after that nothing changes, which means a change, it makes more sense to make a change. That means then you're happy. If we're going to change things anyway, it feels much more useful to change things so that we're happy, which is entirely possible. So sometimes people come with the belief that like, okay, well, it doesn't matter what I do, I'll never be happy. But that's not true. That's not true. The more that you intentionally do, the happier you are. They are directly correlated. Like the more time you spend in the sun, the more likely you are to get a sunburn. Direct correlation. The more intentionally you change things and the more things you intentionally change, the happier that you are. 100% facts. And I will remind you of something you already know but may have forgotten is that you're the person in charge of your future. You're not helpless. You have options. You may not love all of your options right now, and that is totally valid. But the only way to get better options is to change things until your options get better. So remember earlier when I was saying you take one step and doors appear, and then you take another step and doors appear, and you take another step and doors appear. But the doors are dependent on what step you're at. So let's say you're currently in a job that you really don't love and wanting a new job. Okay, the options available to you will be limited by the options available to you. But let's say you take that job, which is in manufacturing, and you go to a different type of manufacturing. Or you're in, you go to a different type of manufacturing. Now, the options available to you are different. So this job had option A, B, and C. This job has options D, E, and F. And let's say we choose E. And then it goes to G, H, I. So every decision you make opens new opportunities. So you may not be able to jump from step 1 to step 7, but eventually you get to step 7 by changing the thing in front of you that it would be useful to change. So you're the person in charge of your future. 100%. You have agency, you have power, you have a beautiful brain, you have the ability to think, you have the ability to get help. You are already so resourced. It just takes intentionally looking for where you're already resourced and then changing things until you're happy, which is such a beautiful space to be. So people can live their lives in fear, and a lot of people do that, and it's sad and it's not very fun. I mean, it's way less fun than living your life, seeing opportunities and taking control. Because when people are living in fear, they feel like they have no control and they constantly give up control in order to maintain a sense of safety. But safety is relative. And I would argue that you're actually way less safe when you refuse to change things, because then change is thrust upon you instead of you being the person who chooses what changes. Okay. That's really the intention behind this episode. Is we want, my vision for you is that you are the person who chooses what changes. Those choices are not made for you by you refusing to make a choice. Choose what changes. I'm just going to end there because that was good. So the more intentionally you change things and the more things you intentionally change, the happier you are, and you get to choose what changes. Okay. Love you. Have a beautiful day. Okay. Bye.